Good evening, Brendan. Good evening, friends. It's another Sunday night, and here we are live from Melbourne. How you going, mate?
Very good, Father. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. It's been a big week.
Yeah, it has another big one, but it's good. It's
Anything
good to be
exciting
here.
happen for you?
Something a little exciting. I had my 21st birthday
Your
actually. Just turned
21st
21.
birthday. How lovely is that, hey? Happy
Yeah,
birthday to you.
yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I was aware of it, Brendan, so I did think that nothing better than having a bit of a cake together on the podcast.
Oh, you
You
shouldn't
know,
have,
it's an
Father.
ISO birthday. Um, so I thought I'd get you a cake. Do you want to try and blow out the candles?
It would be a pleasure too. Thank you.
Here you
Do
go.
you want to
One.
sing me happy birthday first, or no? Forget
Oh
it.
no,
Right, we go.
we might save our listeners that. But one, two, three. Oh, they've actually given
Wonderful.
me trick candles. That's hilarious. It's not,
There we are.
there we are.
Thank you.
Happy
Thanks for
birthday,
putting me.
Brendan.
Thank you, Father. I appreciate it.
To be 21, and I actually brought you a gift as well.
Oh, really?
But the
More than
gift's
just your presents.
Yeah, more than just my presents, but the gift
Oh,
does have a little bit of a story in the sense that in my house, and it's Mother's Day today, so my mum asked for a shout out on the podcast. So she's going to get a shout out as well as a little bit of a story, and so is my old man, because in our house there's a bit of a story called that goes around the town of Warrigal, which is interesting enough, but not the town itself, but that there was a an album put out by John Williamson called Warrigal back in the day when albums were actually released and you could buy an album. Um, and my father brought the album Warrigal for my mother, either for Mother's Day or for her birthday, something like that. But the problem was she didn't like it, and she never liked it, but he did.
classic. Yeah, that's Dad's gift to Mum. That's for
Exactly,
sure.
a gift for himself. So I brought you a gift as well, but it's a bit of a warrigal. But
Oh, I saw it. Yes, well done.
it's
That's it.
for those of you who aren't
Thank you. I
watching live,
appreciate
but
that.
who are listening on the podcast. It's a game of throw burrito, which I know that Brendan is very keen to play. So once we get out of ISO, Brendan, you can come around and we can have a game of throw burrito.
I can't wait to throw a burrito at you, Father.
I did get a bit. The lady in the game shop was a little bit confused because I asked for the taco game, and that's a whole different game. And then I'm like, "Oh, aren't you supposed to throw things at each other?" And she's like, "Oh, that's throw burrito." And I'm like, "Yeah, that one. Yeah, Mexican
You're like
food. It's all the same, isn't it?"
you're like every dad or parent that's ever
Oh,
walked into a board game shop. I
the
want the
the
one where you throw the things.
the one about Mexican food.
The
Yeah.
one with cards in it. Like every game.
So
That's good. No, I'm glad, Father. We're definitely gonna have to play that.
yeah. So and it looks like we're gonna be out of isolation soon. Hopefully.
It looks like it,
By
eh?
the looks of the conversation of the announcements of the Prime Minister on the weekend. So those of us who are in Melbourne, if you happen to be listening from somewhere else in the country, you may already be out of isolation. You may have had this weekend with a little bit of joy. But for the rest of us, we're still waiting here in Victoria. But hopefully it'll be this week. Some of that'll be released, which will be good. But we're going to have a bit of a chat about that later on. But we've got lots of things to chat about this week. Um, Mother's Day. What did you do for Mother's Day?
Oh, Mother's Day. So it's good. Fortunately, I live at home. So you're right there. What was the cat?
It's it's a trick candle and it keeps relighting itself. So I don't want to burn sort of down the podcast while it's going on. Okay. Yeah, so Mother's Day, what did
Um,
you get up to?
yeah. So I live at home. So Mum was here. So it was really nice. We were able to kind of spend the day together. The
Yeah.
big thing was we had lunch. Got a very nice. Actually, it was a bit of an early dinner. It ended up being got some nice Thai food, which is Mum's favorite, and then played a couple of board games. Board games are still going on actually. Got the family in the next room playing some good board games.
Well, I learned a new board game as well this week, but I can't actually remember the name of it. But I've
It wasn't Catan.
no. The Catan was a couple of weeks ago, but my world of board games has been expanding over the this time of COVID-19. So It had jewels and thieves, and you had to move tokens. And I'm actually becoming one of those guys, who
Oh,
actually enjoys board games. Which
this is really exciting, Father. This is really exciting. You're stepping into my world. You know that, yeah. I'm gonna have you playing Dungeons and Dragons before the year's up.
yeah, let's not go too far. I don't think on that one.
We'll see, Father. We'll see.
We will, but it's been a great week. I had my graduation this week
Yes.
in isolation. So I was due to be graduating from my master's on Friday evening in America, but obviously that didn't eventuate. So the seminarians who are staying here at the moment and I had a little bit of a celebration here, but that was a nice thing. So it really has been a week of celebration. So did you get me a graduation gift, Brendan?
You haven't gotten the graduation certificate yet, have you?
It hasn't arrived yet.
So I did get you something.
Oh, here we go.
Um, it's a little something that, like, there we go. And for our listeners at home,
thanks.
it
There we
says,
go.
Father Nicholas, congrats.
It's great.
So there's your piece of paper, Father. You can take that. You can take that anywhere.
Great.
You can frame that. No, but I'm really glad, Father. But you haven't. You keep on telling us that's it, that's the end. But
No,
have you?
I think.
Is it true?
I think it is true. No, I know it is true. I have handed in every piece of assessment for the unit. It's complete. It is over. So I've been reading books and watching movies and playing board games because I've had a bit of spare time on my hands. So
which is good. Which is what you should. Which is a very good thing to be doing.
It's a great thing. So yeah, very happy with that. We obviously have just come through another Sunday. It's Sunday Night Live. So again, we had a Sunday without masses for the vast majority of people, especially people who are listening to the podcast here in Melbourne. So you would have engaged in mass or in prayer in one way or another, and hopefully spent the weekend or some part of the weekend, I suppose, reflecting on the gospel in particular. And this week's gospel was a really, all of the readings actually, there was a really nice theme. And it's one of the advantages, I suppose, we have of the new Mass is that the lectionary and the prayers were sort of put together quite specifically. So the prayers and the readings, often you see this link between the opening prayer and the closing prayer of Mass and the reading itself. And in the readings this weekend, there was this really lovely sort of theme throughout not only the readings, but also the prayers. And it was a real sort of summation of the journey of Christian life. So the opening prayer for Mass makes this lovely reference to baptism, which of course for all of us, for you, Brendan, for me, for Justine, who's coming on a little bit later on to talk about, for everyone, it's the beginning of our Christian journey. So it starts there. And then the first reading, we see the ordination and the selection of the deacons. And they're given a specific function in the early church. So that's a reminder to us that after our baptism, each one of us is called to a specific vocation. And whilst there's a number of vocations, each one of us has been called to live out our baptismal calling in a very specific way. It then gets a little bit tough because in the second reading this weekend, we see Jesus' prediction of the suffering, not only for himself, but for his disciples. So it's a reminder to us that whatever our vocation, however we've been called to serve the church, there's going to be a bit of hardship. There's going to be a bit of challenge. There's going to be a bit of difficulty, whether that's as a married couple, whether that's as a priest or a religious, whether that's as a single person who's committed their life to the Lord in their single life. However we've been called, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be some hardship, and Jesus sort of predicts for that. But then, of course, the gospel today is that lovely gospel where Jesus tells us that there's many rooms in the Father's house, and he's going to prepare a place. It's actually one of the most commonly read gospel passages at funerals. I don't know if you've heard it at a funeral, Brendan, but it's quite regularly read at funerals. One of that is because one of the major funeral directors puts it in their sort of pro forma booklet. So a lot of families, I think, just choose it because it's the first one that they see.
Mm.
But otherwise, it sort of speaks to us really beautifully about the fact that everything that we go through in this life has a final goal. There's a final destination where we're moving through this life from our baptism. It starts at our baptism. On the day of our baptism, our Lord starts preparing a place for us in his Father's mansion. And our particular vocation is how we're called to work in this life, how we're called to achieve that goal, how we're called to serve the Lord and serve his church. And that whatever suffering or hardship that we have to put up with in the process of that has some meaning, that it can be redemptive, that there can be a goodness that comes out of that, the hardship and the challenge, especially if we do it courageously. If we live that mission, that vocation that we've been given with great courage. And what is the reward? What do we get at the end of it all? A share in eternal life, a place in the kingdom of God, sort of a seat sort of in the mansion. That's a pretty nice promise for a Sunday, if you know what I mean. And for me, I think it's pretty encouraging for the beginning of a week, sort of to be reminded that we all share in that fundamental baptismal responsibility. We all live it out in a particular way, and together, if we persevere, even through the hardships, that we're going to rejoice together forever in heaven one day. So that's what I got from the readings. Was there anything that spoke to you, Brendan?
I think, and you've put it really well, one thing that really strikes is that it is a reminder of what we're heading towards. And when you look at it through a very simple lens, which I think that the gospel does, and I think that the way you were kind of framing that really does as well. If it's our baptism, then it's our vocation, whatever it is we're called to. Then it's eternity in heaven. Like baptism, that's just something, if we've all, as Catholics, we've made that choice, or it was less of we are if it was made for us by our parents when we were children. But then it's vocation, like what can we be doing now is just faithfully living out our vocation. It's just asking God, what is that? And how can I faithfully live that out? And then the reminder of what is to come. Like as Catholics, we profess that we believe that one day there is going to be eternity in heaven. We don't go through all of this heartache, this struggle in life without the promise of literally eternal bliss in heaven with God. So it's so like, I love this gospel because we need that constant reminder, because we get quite held down in life with just, the daily grind of having to do whatever we need to do. But just when we remind ourselves of what it's all for, like what the whole point of all of this is eternal bliss in heaven with God. And that should be enough to lift our spirits and to go, okay, this is a very short moment, and I need to be faithful to this moment to reach that.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense if we don't have that, and if we don't have this sort of eternal dimension in our lives. Most of what the church asks of us does not make sense if we're not striving for something beyond this world. A life of celibacy, a lifelong marriage, if you mean, with all of its hardships and trials and struggles. Any vocation, any call to mission, and all the sufferings that come with us only make sense if we can keep our eyes fixed on that goal. And I suppose that's the goal of the Christian life, of our spiritual life, is keeping that sort of eternal outlook, because so often in the world in which we live, we get weighed down, and our gaze gets drawn down to the things of this world. So how do we constantly lift our gaze upwards towards that goal that is in store for each one of us?
Mm.
I think one of the things I definitely have felt since this time of isolation this time of social distancing, and obviously with a really different workload since I've been back. But you've been working from home as well, Brendan. Is that in a number of ways that spiritual life for me definitely has been it's flourished a little bit in isolation. It's actually grown because there's been more time. Like I spent a couple of hours yesterday reading the life of a saint because I just had the time. Because the office was closed and I'd done all my work and I just had a bit of space, and that was really wonderful. So, with the announcement that we're about to start coming out of isolation, um, I'm a little bit apprehensive because there's actually been some real positives in this time for me. And when we were talking to the Archbishop last week, we sort of asked him a little bit about this as well. But this idea of as we're coming out of isolation, um, is there anything that you, Brendan, want to keep? Is there any lessons that you've learnt in this time that you want to take with you into sort of back to normal life, whatever that's going to look like?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The When you have the time to kind of choose what you're going to do in the day rather than just, kind of having to be in this almost reactionary response to all of the things that you've committed yourself to, that have maybe built up over the years. This has been a huge shock to the system for me, for everyone. But a really good lesson that I think that I'm going to take away from this is how much I actually do enjoy just being at home and having that time to kind of, it's amazing how beautiful a bit of time is when you can just go, you sit back and you go, like, what do I want to do right now? Like, what would I actually like to do? Like, what would be something that I would enjoy doing right now? And it's strange that we just don't seem to, or it's not strange actually why we wouldn't have the opportunity to do that outside of COVID, because we live in a very busy, active world where, if someone asks us a question, what are you up to? And you say, oh, I don't know. We see that as a mark of shame, almost, as, oh, you're not busy. Like,
Yeah.
everyone kind of always wants to be busy. But I think just going, no, I actually kind of enjoy just having sometimes just being able to go, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm kind of excited to find out what that's going to be when I get there. And obviously we got to have that in balance, but I think that at least having some of that time in the week somewhere is really beneficial to the soul.
What was that? It might be like so sort of yesterday. This might be your next opportunity to call me a father, Brendan. You've already done it once in the podcast, but FOMO, fear of missing out, is that still a thing or not?
I mean, FOMO will always still be a thing. It's probably not the hashtag that's trending right now,
Yeah,
but it's a thing. Yeah, yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
almost like COVID-19 to me. It's sort of like, do you know what? I don't I don't actually fear of miss like that, as you're saying, this idea of, do you know what, being at home and sitting on the couch and reading a book, or God forbid playing a board game, um, might not be that bad. I think I definitely am really worried about the return to the busyness of Sundays. I think one thing that this time of isolation has really forced most families to do, apart from obviously being able to go to church, which is obviously a part that should be integral to everybody's Sunday, but with less shops open and no sport for kids, and no real places to go, maybe apart from a park or to ride a bike or to do some exercise, there's actually been something really nice of I've obviously had to be out and about a little bit, visiting parishioners or going to the hospital, but watching like families walking together through the streets, like
Mm.
that's all that they can do. So that's what they've done. So I'm a little bit worried about sort of seeing what's going to happen to Sundays again when the world reopens, and every like Sunday for most young families is just it's where it's been given to them as a day of rest by the Lord. For most families that I know, it's probably the busiest day of their week because everything is sort of crammed into a Sunday and families just go from one thing to the next. So I sort of fear that a little bit. as coming out of it. I think, and we had this conversation with the Archbishop last week. I think one of the things that we really should be encouraging people to do, and we do this at the end of spiritual retreats, is to actually make some resolutions. Like, so I suppose we know that we're about to come out of isolation. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be like tomorrow, everything's back to normal. But so we've almost been given like the sort of the 15-minute wind up, and we know that it's coming. So I think it's a real opportunity for us to actually make a couple of really concrete resolutions. But that's actually going to take people taking a bit of stock and sort of reflecting back on the last few weeks. So a little bit like an examination of conscience, but I think it's a really important thing for people to do, is to actually sit back and go, okay, well, what has happened, if you know? Izzy in the combox has mentioned the fact that her spiritual life has flourished in ISO as well, which is a really wonderful thing. But how do we keep this going? I think we need to reflect on it first and foremost. And I think we've sort of got a couple of weeks between now and when we're going to be back to normal. So taking some time to do that reflection and then setting yourself a few goals, I think that's probably a really important thing as well. Like, what am I going to do? Like, rather than just sort of reflecting and sort of going, oh, it was a wonderful time. Okay, well, how am I actually going to change it? Have you heard of the acronym SMART or SMART goals, Brendan?
SMART goals, yes, I have. An excellent one.
It's only something that I've sort of come up myself. I've only learned about in the last couple of years, but I think it's really helpful if people haven't heard of it. About sometimes we make really big goals for ourselves and we wonder why we never achieve them. But this idea of making SMART goals is that they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. So if we're going to make a goal for ourselves coming out of COVID-19, it's got to be specific enough. It can't just be, oh, I'm going to pray more or spend more time in silence. If you mean, okay, we've got to be a little bit more specific about that. It's got to be measurable. So we've got to be able to hold ourselves account to it. How do I actually know whether or not I've done this or not? Attainable. So realistic. I'm going to make a holy hour every day before the Blessed Sacrament. But if you live in a town that doesn't have a church, that's not going to be particularly realistic. So how do we start with things that are measurable and attainable, and then relevant? Okay, so what, like, am I making a goal that's actually relevant to what I want to achieve? So again, back to that question of holiness: is this actually going to be relevant to what I want to do? And then time bound. I think that's a really big one, that we put a date on it. Okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to check in on myself in 4 weeks' time or 6 weeks' time, because sometimes we can make a big goal and then there's never any real sort of measurement of time on it. So I don't know, hopefully that's helpful for people, because I think making SMART goals might be a really good way of sort of, especially in the spiritual life, people continuing to grow post COVID-19. Have you got anything in particular you want to take with you, Brendan? More time on your own?
More time. I think more time at home, and just really enjoying that time with family as well. While they're still with us, while our mothers and fathers are still with us and siblings are still around, I think that's something I'll be taking with me.
Yeah.
What about you, fella?
I think the quietness, I think, is definitely it. I think it's enjoying it. I think going back to a hectic, and life will get busier. You know, we're not going to live in isolation for the rest of our lives, and that would actually drive us crazy. And it's sort of, I'm looking forward to being able to catch up with friends, face to face. I'm looking forward to not having meetings over Zoom. I find Zoom really hard to have meetings, let alone run a podcast. Like it's really hard to gauge people's body language through sort of Zoom. And so much of what generally happens in meetings happens, not with what people are saying. But so there, I suppose the two things, catching up with friends again, and getting out of Zoom for meetings and actually being able to just pop into someone's office or catch up with them in the corridor or go out for a coffee and sort of just chew the fat. I think that's what I'm looking forward to. But yeah, keeping that balance between, okay, but I don't want to be in 8 hours of meeting every day anymore. Like I've appreciated a little bit of quietness.
And I think that's it. I think it's we've learned the flip side of, the super busyness of life, and we've seen what it's like to have that really quietness. So how can we take the beauty of what this time in isolation has been and balance it out with maybe the craziness and the hectic whatever life was before?
Yeah. Now, Brendan, you know that we're in a bit of trouble, don't you?
A little bit. I think we're running over time and we still haven't let Justine in.
Well, yeah, apart from running over time, the trouble is that our podcast has sort of gone sort of a meteoric rise from nothing 6 weeks ago and a whole heap of internet problems to having the Archbishop on last week. So it's pretty sort of like, I think we were discussing, if it's not the Archbishop, where do we go next? Okay, the Holy Father. It's pretty tough to a tough act to follow. Maybe we've sort of peaked a little bit too early in our podcast sort of history. But if we weren't going to get the Archbishop, I think our next guest is the next best option.
So true.
For people who don't know Justine, we're going to admit her into the podcast now. I don't know. We're going to welcome her in here. Justine is a young Catholic woman from here in the Archdiocese of Melbourne, and we're going to have a great chat with her tonight. Here she is.
Oh, Justine.
So you finally decided to let me in from the waiting room.
I know. Blame Father Nick. He just wouldn't stop.
Yabbing on and on and on.
Ringing the doorbell.
Smart goals or something rather.
How you going? Nice to see your digital faces.
Oh, no. Very good to see you.
Hey, Justine,
well.
It's a very illustrious waiting room. We kept the Archbishop waiting in there last week, so I don't know. Do you get waiting music or anything? Or
I got no snacks. I was like, where's the burger or like Doritos?
We didn't get your rider. I'm sorry. What would be on your rider if you were a rock star and you got to put together a list of things that were going to be in your waiting room? What would be the top thing on that list?
I would want a packet of M&Ms with solely blue M&Ms in it. The rest hand-picked out.
Solely blue? Why? Do they taste? M&Ms don't taste different by colour, do they?
No, apparently that was on Beyonce's rider, and I secretly, but not so secretly, am Beyonce. So
I think that's also how you assert that you mean something. If you're getting people hand picking out the right colours for you, then
no, I would so never do that. Anything free, and I'm a happy lady. Whatever it is, it's free. It's the Maltese gene in me.
We've just been talking about lockdown, Justine. I'm going to throw a hard one at you to start with. What's been the hardest part of lockdown for you?
Just to quickly pick up on your mispronunciation of my name, Loctine is going to be the name of my first single post-lockdown. Loctine. And I'll give you a special tribute there. The hardest thing about lockdown, it sounds so cliche, but I am such a people person. I'm so extroverted and I just love being in people's lives. Just that very real and raw part of me that just wants to be around people, eating food and, laughing and catching up about life. So I hope I won't be like too full on the first encounter that I have, like, hi, how are you? Tell me everything. But I'll try and pep talk myself down in the car to be at a reasonably normal social level. Not to be that person that's going to try and make everything optimistic. But yeah, certainly, as you guys have said, like just the gold that you found in a place you didn't think you'd find it because of lockdown has just been really cool, and like super ordinary things, like the stuff that you're realizing is not like mind-blowing. Oh, I should slow down. Like it's not mind-blowing, yet it's changing your life.
Is there something in particular that you're going to take with you, like something that you're going to that you've learned about yourself in lockdown that you're going to take into sort of post-COVID life?
Yeah, Brendan, when you said earlier, just like that, the busyness is like the status, like the flashing light of occupation, like busy. I try and avoid that word. I hate saying I'm busy, but I'll just substitute another word for it often. And yeah, I just think that I want to slow down and I want to stop sort of trucking through life and always trying to think like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What's next? What's next? Again, like so ordinary, but in the mayhem and excitement of your life, it's the ordinary things that actually stabilize you. It's the ordinary things that actually mean the most. So yeah, I totally learned a lot. I think I've done the learning. I'm done, I'm did, and
Get me
I'm
out of
ready
here.
to be out.
One of the things that I learned that wasn't particularly a good thing, whilst I was in America, I stayed with a group of religious, and they had once a week what they called Bad Religious Night, which was where they would order in Uber Eats and watch Netflix. So
Oh,
just a
yeah.
shout out to the New York Dominicans there.
Oh, that's the best.
But since I've been back, and I've got a couple of seminarians living here at the moment, we've had Bad Religious Night once a week as well. And we've found out that Yo My Goodness, the burger joint,
Yes,
delivers on Uber Eats thanks
that
to
is
COVID-19.
dangerous.
So I hear, and Jerry in the combox makes a reference to you and cheeseburgers and Ignite 2018. But if you were ordering a burger from Yo My Goodness, what would it be?
Aren't they like wild and like super like it's got mac and cheese in it and like weird stuff? Is that
I'm just a pretty sort of standard, sort of run-of-the-mill cheeseburger kind of guy.
well, I felt intimidated by your question because I am too. And I don't even care. If you judge, I don't even care. My worth is not in my cheeseburger choice, but I love Macca's cheeseburgers. And that phase where they were like $1, I just love it. But in my cheeseburger gallivants around the globe, I reckon Betty's Burgers are by far just the normal original Betty's Burger.
Where's Betty's Burgers?
That's American for sure.
Nah, it's Queensland.
Oh, is it really?
Probably also the
Betty's.
most expensive
Yeah,
burger you'll ever eat if you live in Melbourne. But yeah, really good.
Okay, so you've just returned, like you've been back in Melbourne for a little while now, but you did spend a little bit of time in Brisbane and you were there sort of on mission. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I suppose like my career or my job has never really been conventional, but it's been just my work has been so tied to my mission, which I feel really lucky about. But yeah, a couple of years back, I just finished my Bachelor of Arts. I majored in theology, and I'd been doing a bit of ministry. I'd volunteered in ministry with Net Ministries for a couple of years. And yeah, the director of Net just called and said, hey, like your name keeps coming up. Just wondering if you'd ever consider moving to Brisbane to work for us. And I was like, nah, I wouldn't. And then I think a year passed and yeah, God cornered me, and I then went back to Mark and just really felt strong in my heart that that I wanted to see the church come alive. I have this desire in me, and I don't even know how to do it. But I just want to see the church be everything that it can be, and I think a fruit of that is this like fire you see when people are alive, you know, on fire for Jesus in a real way. And I just thought, man, like I can't do this on my own. I remember thinking, I just got to learn from people who are just unapologetic about that. And yeah, Brisbane, I mean, Melbourne's amazing, but Brisbane's got some wild cats up there doing some amazing things for youth and young adults, but also for the church in general. So yeah, I did an interview and started working for Net Ministries. So Net stands for the National Evangelization Teams, and basically each year, you know, up to 45 young people volunteer a year of their life to do mission. So at unis, just being normal humans who happen to also love Jesus, and be really passionate about sharing that with other people at schools, around major cities. So I worked with them. So I was working with the, missionaries on the ground. I was writing up the training for the missionaries, and developing new content and a whole heap of other fun stuff. So yeah, got paid peanuts, but hey, lucky I'm not allergic.
Hey, that's the mission.
Yeah, mate, it's real.
You've done some amazing things then. Can you share with us, and I suppose it's Mother's Day today, so I don't know whether it's people in your own life or whether there's any particular saints or people within the history of the church who have inspired you?
Totally. Um, Totally my mum. She's just real and raw, and it's scary, like how much of the annoying teenager in me like rebelled against my mum and like was like but I just like am now realizing like I am my mum, like bad jokes, like scary laugh, the loud sneezes, but like her fiery passion, and just desire to be so real and authentic. And yeah, like I put up a post recently. I was asked to write a post about my mum, and yeah, just to honor her for Mother's Day. And this lady came from this tiny Mediterranean island of Malta, and then her and my dad decided, 3 kids, we need to move to Australia. And they moved to Craigieburn. So from this like tiny little Mediterranean island where you can basically walk around it in a day, they moved to whoop whoop cows in our like front yard. And she never complained, but just the struggle of like integrating and being away from every single member of her family, but just in the depths of their heart, just knowing that they were following God. Like I'm like, man, that's in my blood, that heroic, just like, we know this is where God's calling us, so we're gonna go. Like, dang. And I wasn't even born yet, so I was just kind of being born into my mum's heroic choices. So yeah, she's great. I love my mum, and I think she's funny, and that's probably mostly because I'm realizing I take after her. So if I don't think she's funny, then I definitely am not. But yeah, and also I also worked for this other ministry called Real Talk. And so we'd fly around to all these schools, and I'd do these women's sessions and talk about true beauty. And it was all about talking about how the society puts this massive emphasis on our externals and da 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 da. And then at the end of the session, really meaningful session, we'd talk about Mother Teresa. And she was a big part of me and a couple of girlfriends going to the Philippines. But I read about her today, and she was next level.
Yeah.
Like flipping heck. I vaguely remembered this story of her going to Lebanon because she'd found out that there was this orphanage of disabled kids that had just been abandoned. And I was reading today, the hospital, so it was in the 80s, I think. The hospital had been bombed, the staff had just left and abandoned these disabled kids. So she found out, rocks up to Lebanon and is like, let's go. And she sort of goes to the front line because obviously there's a war going on, and tells this priest, we're going. Yeah. And the priest basically tells her, you're crazy. Like, that's lovely, but you're crazy. A priest died like the day before trying to get there. She's like, no, I've been praying to Our Lady for a ceasefire, and there will be a ceasefire tomorrow, and we will cross and we will go and get those kids. Like, I don't know. I just imagine her with sass, but she probably didn't sound anything like that. And sure enough, like the next day, ceasefire, and they go to this hospital and save, these disabled kids who were, and I think this is amazing, like it doesn't matter, but it's the detail. It was an Islamic hospital, and it's like it's just so testament to her seeing every human life, every single one of them, as important. I'm like, mate, like when they talk about feminine genius, that's it. Like sometimes I think when we talk about women, I don't know, I'm so scared that people just picture dresses and cupcakes and high teas.
Yeah, no. And this is a great point. And Mother Teresa is one of my favourite saints as well. But yes. Mother Teresa, our own Mary MacKillop, we don't have to look very far to see that most of the female saints in the church were women of great passion and zeal, and
Yeah.
who changed things.
Yeah.
And when I'm speaking to school students, I generally ask them the question, who do they think the most influential saint in the world has been in the last 100 years? And it's really hard for students to sometimes answer that. But I would have to say, and I put up a picture of Mother Teresa and St. John Paul II side by side, but I think that she was one of the most influential, if not the most influential saints in the world in the last 100 years, because of the effect that she had, not just within the church, but
Yeah.
outside of the church, on the world in which we live. And this just happens time and time again throughout history. Justine, you're a young Catholic woman in Melbourne. You're doing lots of great things to change the world. Have you got a message for any young women who are listening about being a leader in the church here in Melbourne, and a leader in the church, I suppose, in the world at this time?
Totally. First and foremost, like, we're bloody privileged. Like, I know that I live in a very privileged slice of life where, for the most part, I haven't been chastised for being a woman, which is, I think, a lot of a conversation that I'm just not a part of, and I'll leave that to whoever else. But I think the most powerful women are the ones who don't wait for permission to just start, and the ones who don't bulldoze their way around, but the ones who just go for and pursue exactly what they believe God is calling them to do. And I think that, yeah, there are some, I don't even want to use the word battles, but yeah, there's some cleaning up to do. And I think, yeah, we're well on the way. But I think as a woman, I love, and I feel a bit like, I'm going to use that quote, but I really resonated with St. Catherine of Siena's quote, be who you're created to be and you'll set the world on fire. And for me, that just resonates with, like, I don't have to have a badge on or have the token role as the token woman in the church to fill a gap. Like, I don't want to be a gap. I don't want a badge to say, oh, I represent the female percentage in this. I just want to be who God created me to be. And in doing that, I fulfill my call as a woman. And I think that's really liberating to know that I'm already free, and that if God wants me somewhere, I'll be there, and if I'm not meant to be there, I won't be there. And that's I'm the way, the truth, and the life. God is. And when we follow that, we're free, and we don't have to fight. But I also know that there's women around the world who do have to fight. Like, mate, we're privileged here. So yeah, just a bit of perspective.
It's really interesting you mentioned being where God calls you to be, and again, your work for the church, your mission has taken you lots of different places, but He's called you now here back to Melbourne, and you've got a job in the Archdiocese and working in the new mission office that's going to be helping sort of support and foster faith in the young people of Melbourne, and in a particular way in focusing on making disciples. And you've spoken about it already, but like, what does that look like for you, being a disciple here in 2020 in Melbourne, Australia?
Totally. It's about getting a pair of sandals, a white robe, and getting a beard, sticking it on. I think it's been so amazing. Like, getting this role is kind of intimidating, because I think I thought, oh crap, like, people are going to think you know everything about it. In fact, I don't. And I think that's what qualifies me for this role, is that I realize that there is a city of young people who know Jesus, or want to know Jesus, or are hungry for Jesus. It's those categories. Who, if they hear the message and truly believe it in an authentic, real way, will come alive, and it won't just be me and a couple of my mates. But being a disciple, I've been learning so much about it, is like, first and foremost, being raw and in love with Jesus, because you know how raw His love and real His love is for you. Like, unless you get that, and I don't even get it, so it's not even like getting it, it's allowing God to show you that, then you really can't be a disciple. It's like, poor analogy, but like trying to be a maths teacher and no maths qualification. Like, it doesn't make sense. But Jesus just wants that personal relationship. And then it's a big journey. Like, you don't just magically become a disciple, like poof, like transform Disney fairy tale. Like, it's this constant pursuit of Jesus, constantly learning more about who he is, who he calls you to be, and the gifts he's given you, and then using them and responding to him, and totally just chasing after him and bringing others with him, because you realize you can't keep it to yourself.
And it's not pretty sometimes.
Nah, man. Look at me. Mate, me and Father Nick had a phone call on Friday after. It's been a big week for me. And yeah, it was hard. Like, it's not easy. And I love you guys are talking about the scriptures about today. I love that God doesn't deceive, Jesus doesn't deceive us. Like, it's going to be hard. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it.
No.
And
quite generally, if it's the easy option, it's generally not the Lord's option. I found in my experience.
Yeah,
and like he particularly wants pain and suffering or hardship, but that other great quote of Pope Emeritus Benedict, you weren't made for comfort, you were made for greatness. Like, we're all called to strive for greatness, and that's not always going to be comfortable. Justine, we're almost out of time, but we're almost out of quarantine as well. We're almost out of social isolation. Not just yet, the light's over the horizon, but what's your hope, I suppose, for the young people of the church here in Melbourne? Like, coming out of COVID-19, coming out of this, it might be 4 weeks, it might be 6 weeks, it might be 8 weeks before we can start getting back together like we're so used to. But have you got like a hope for what it's going to look like as we come out the other side?
Totally. I just want to be awake, like, and I don't want to get busy. And I want to remember the ordinary things that we realize actually change our lives. And I think that the cool thing, if you let it challenge you in quarantine, is like, there's a burning passion that in young people, especially, that hasn't been watered down by reality yet. And I hope that we just unleash that, you know, in this city of Melbourne. Like, call me a dreamer, I don't care. But like, let's not keep that in lockdown. I think we try and play things safe, or, you know, we don't connect out of fear or whatever, like stuff that, like, you know, we've physically been in lockdown, but I think the potential and the vision and the dream of young people, we keep that in lockdown. And I pray that we let it loose. And that's a big part of my dream and my prayer for our team, is that we meet you, whoever you are, and we connect, and we do something big for this city. And the best thing we can do is make Jesus known, but enjoy it along the way and connect with other amazing people, and eat cheeseburgers along the way too.
Fantastic. Last week we gave the Archbishop the wind up without actually asking him if he had anything he wanted to say that we hadn't already covered. So I've learned that lesson. Is there anything that you want to say, last words before we give you the wind up and put you back in the waiting room?
With no snacks, might I add. I would say, don't wait. Like, if you're waiting for permission to do something, or you felt like you want to share something, or be involved in mission, or don't wait. And yeah, remember, it might be hard. Who cares? Join the club, mate. Like, we're all in it together. But the blessing and the freedom and the truth that comes about when you actually just follow what you know God has put on, or you kind of don't really know if God's put it on your heart, but you sort of kind of think it is. Don't wait. And hit us up, get connected. I think your youth minister once told me, he's like, Justine, like, why are we like so disconnected? Like, I don't get it. All the young people, like, we should just get together. I'm like, yeah, Joe, you're right. So let's connect and let's hang out. So I hope I get to meet as many of you as possible.
Cool. Thank you so much, Justine, for coming on tonight. We haven't spoken to you about the Zoom catch-up for the young people from Melbourne, but hopefully you're available following this podcast for the Zoom catch-up. But yeah, thanks very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
We look forward to catching up. So we're going to put you back in the waiting room while we wrap up here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Justine. Thanks,
guys. See ya.
Cheers. Bye.
Pick me out.
Out you go.
Do it. I dare you.
I don't know how to do it.
Nah, I'll leave.
You got to leave yourself.
This is awkward. Bye.
The technology is a step too far for me. Wow, Brendan, that's pretty inspiring.
That was
Justine,
good.
she's a pretty passionate young woman, and it's really exciting that she's working here in the church here in Melbourne, because she's got a lot of energy and a lot of passion and a great love for Jesus. So we're really glad that she's working for us. And yeah, she'll be in that Zoom catch up straight after this podcast. So if you are listening live this evening on Sunday night, stick around, because it'd be great if she got a chance to maybe chat with some of you straight up. Brendan, it's been a full week, a full podcast. Next week we might actually be face to face.
Who knows? Daniel Andrews willing, we will be.
So let's keep up the prayers over the next 12 or 14 hours, and just really hope that the Victorian government sort of makes a few things a little bit more available. In particular, the opening of churches, because I think of all the things that the faithful that I've spoken to have missed, it's just the ability to step inside of a church, and I think that real longing to be in the presence of the Eucharist. So let's really redouble our prayers this evening, and hope that our churches can be reopened tomorrow, even if that means no public masses just yet. We understand that. I think the ability for Catholics to visit the Blessed Sacrament, I think, is a really important thing. If you're listening to the podcast for the first time tonight, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Melbourne Praise is more than just this podcast, but each day we pray morning prayer at 7:30 a.m., the Holy Rosary at 12, and the Chaplet at 3 live on YouTube. So in particular for students and young adults who are looking for a way to break up their day, especially if you are working and studying from home, we really encourage you to subscribe to the channel and join us for those periods of prayer throughout the day. Otherwise, you can head across to Facebook and like our page, facebook.com/Melbourne Praise. And if you're listening live, you can find the podcast both on Google and Apple if you search for Melbourne Praise, or for Sunday Night Live from Melbourne, or it's available at melbournepraise.podbean.com. So it'd be really good if you're listening live, if you could share some of those links with with your friends, spread the word. We're really hoping that this be something that continues on beyond COVID-19. Brendan, what's happening after the podcast live this evening?
Father, we're going to have a chat with anyone who's listening that's willing to have a chat. It's for young adults, so anyone between the ages of 18 and 35, come and join us for our post-show chat. Justine's going to be there, so you get to kind of, if you want to ask some questions for her, it's going to be an amazing opportunity for young adults to kind of connect and chat about, what things we've spoken about in this podcast, and just to have a bit of a socials.
So if you've been listening in previous weeks, you can follow the link that you've already received. It's the same link each week. But if you're new to the podcast tonight and you want to join us, if you're between the ages of 18 and 35 and you're a young Catholic here in the Archdiocese of Melbourne, you can like the Melbourne Praise Facebook page and send a quick message through to that on Facebook, and Brendan will send you through the details for the Zoom meeting tonight. But otherwise, just one final plug this evening, and that's for Wednesday night's podcast that we started last week. We had a few technical issues, but we're back. That was the pilot. So we're back this Wednesday night, 8 p.m. live on YouTube for Discernment Straight Up. So that's a conversation in particular for young Catholic men who are thinking about what God might be asking for them with the rest of their lives. So we really encourage you to join me and 6-year seminarian JC Napolis for that on Wednesday night. That's also will be available on podcast following the live show. Otherwise, thanks, Brendan. It's been a great night. Happy birthday again. 21. You've got the key to the door. You're just not allowed to leave it just yet, but hopefully in the week ahead.
Love it. Thanks, Father.
Cheers. God bless. Thanks, guys.
God bless.